Since we've gone through most of the basic features of type and audio, and even some initial examples of kinetic type, I wanted to go through a few more options and ideas for transitions, since most of what drives a kinetic type project is how you get from one grouping of words to another. Now, we demoed this in the last video just by showing how a few words enter and exit the screen. They have a simple slide on, "Hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites." And then they use a null object to rotate those words off as a group using rotation and position. But what are some other ideas? What else could we use to move from scene to scene to scene? Most of you in your full project will have 10 to 12, maybe 15 transitions. And it's not enough just to have words, fade onto the screen and then fade off. That can be a little underwhelming. So we can keep the user engaged and more connected if we vary our transitions from scene to scene. So I've got these three lines. "Hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites." I have them connected to a null. And I'm just going to duplicate those words just to bring them on and off screen a few more times. So this will be a short video, but just might show a few other transitions we might use. So I'm going to hit Command or Control D. I'm going to move them up in my scene, and I'm going to move them over in my timeline, just so that they kind of, in a way, restart. Now, they're all still parented to that Act 1 null, so I'm going to turn that off. And they're all still yellow, so I'm going to change that to and change them to aqua. So that way we just know kind of when transition 2 takes place. Now the position keyframes are still present here, so all of these objects should animate on here from time to time. Let me see what happened. Looks like they were still parented. So let me do this real quick. I'm going to back off a few of those steps, bear with me, but you'll see this could be a benefit to you as well. So I've got these three. Let's go ahead and I'm going to duplicate them here instead of at the end. That way when I unparent them, they will be left here and not down there. So let's unparent these, and then let's change them to aqua. And then let's move them over here, and we should be good. Beautiful. When you unparent something, you just have to be very careful about when and where you do that, because it'll leave things exactly where they are that moment. So the fact that I unparented them at the beginning of my timeline made an impact. So keep that in mind. All right, so we have positions, keyframes coming on. So let's go ahead and turn those all off. That leaves them all off screen. Well, how could we bring these characters or these words on in a different way than sliding on from left? Well, let's go ahead, actually. I'm going to bring those keyframes back. And I'm going to delete the first keyframe from each one of them. So that way they show up on screen right where they're at. So that way it was just a fast way to get them to stay there. And instead of them falling from the right, I'm going to have them fall from the top. So here is their ending position. So I've got those in place. And I'm going to use just a simple, I'm going to set keyframes here at the beginning, and then I'm going to, one by one, I'm just going to move them off screen. So that way they're going to fall. Actually, let's have them come from the bottom. It doesn't make sense for them to come from the top in this case because of how they're stacked. So then I'm going to go to I'm Matt 2, grab the position, and move it down below. And then I have favorites, move it down below. And then what we should see is them all coming up, but we're not. So let's kind of correct for that. So it looks like I'm not quite on my keyframes and it's creating multiples. So let's go ahead and grab high 2. Let's make sure I'm on my keyframe, and we can move it up into position. So it's just a kind of a similar, it's truthfully a similar intro. It's just coming from a different angle, which is still suitable. Oops, I'm in the wrong one. Let's get this guy at the right spot. And we'll move this last guy on. So now they come on all at once. Now a quick way to adjust that is we can just click and drag these to stagger them a little bit. So we kind of animated them as a group, but then we colored. Oops, let's turn that off. Apologies. Hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites. We can turn off, I don't want my audio to play because with this recording, it'll pick it up by the microphone. So we can quickly just turn off that recording just by hitting that audio button, just as a heads up. So now I have, hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites. So our first intro was sliding from the right, then we have a slide from the bottom, not bad. Let's do a different outro though. So let's play with transparency. So I'm going to grab all three of these guys together, hit the T key, and I'm just going to create a quick fade. Stopwatches on all three. I'm going to do these all at once so that the words get out of the way all at once. Then I'm going to set the opacity to 0 for each one of them. So they basically just fade out. Now if I wanted to, I could click and stagger these for just a little bit of visual effect. That way they don't fade out at exactly the same time. That looks pretty nice. We could also use that as a way to transition them on. So if I grab all of these, it could be a new intro is to fade in. We'll click stopwatch or keyframe for each one. Come here, set opacity to 100. So now it's acting as a fade in. And then I'm going to stagger them once again. So you can see how transparency could be a good outro as well as intro. And when working together, they can be some nice transitions. Right, so it can be an outro or an intro. So I kind of cheated there. So let's go ahead and duplicate these one more time. So I have all three of them. I'm going to drag them to the top so they kind of group together. I'm going to change their color to pink this time, and then I'm going to move them all back here. So let's try and do one more transition. This one I'm actually going to leave. Let's get these guys out of here, shall we? Actually, let me clip them right here. Just do a quick clip. So they come on normally, but I want to do a different type of transition. I'm going to do a color fade transition. So the intro I'm going to leave the same, but you can also use solids and colors to transition in and out. So let's do that on this one. So I'm going to do a layer, new solid. And the solid is going to be the color of the type. And I'm going to make sure that it's the size of my composition. So I'm going to make comp size. Okay. And then I'm going to want to clip this solid layer so that it's only over these last few. So I can do that by grabbing the left side of my layer and just dragging it to the right. So after these three come on screen, hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites. Then I'm going to use a transparency animation or opacity animation on this guy. So I'm going to start it at 0. And I'm going to animate it to 100. And because I use the exact same color as the type, it is going to look like the color is kind of taking over, and it's going to look real nice. So let me get rid of these extra transparency keyframes that came with my copy paste operation there. So let's go ahead and, oops, forgive me. I think, so these move on, and, oh, I see. All right, I'm going to move these off to the right, so just ignore me for now, but I understand what's happening. I had keyframes that were later in these animations, so if I deleted those, it was going to set them down to 0. So ignore that. So now let's animate our solid in. So solid, I had it set at 0. I'm going to set it now at 100. And what's happening is the text layers are kind of fading into that other layer as a means of transition. So I just take these type layers and I move them over here just to give us a little bit more room. Kind of move this guy out so we have more room. It really acts as a brand new, duplicate these and bring this up here, like it's a brand new scene because the color has changed. So now if I were to animate new type layers on top of this one, it feels fresh and clean and new. So I'm going to change these 3 text layers to, like, say, I'd love to change them to whatever the background color was. But let's just go ahead and do bar dark purple. So I changed those 3 now. It makes a very different feeling from that dark background to the light type to the dark. So hi, I'm Matt. I have a few favorites. Screen fades in. Now new type comes in and has a whole different feel to it, doesn't it? So hit spacebar, fades, new type. So even though you're using the same transition over a different background, that shift in color of the background really helps it feel like something that's quite different. So you can use position movements, you can use scale, transparency, fades, color fades. All of these are great ideas for transitions when you're experimenting with your kinetic type piece.